Okay, Teddy. So to learn about the world and do science, the first thing we got to do is just observe. We just have to look around. Now, we can look around with our eyes, but sometimes we can see things we couldn't normally see if we use a special instrument.
So like a telescope or a microscope or something like that.
Telescope or a microscope or a kaleidoscope. The quantum kaleidoscope is an instrument that you can use to see things that you wouldn't normally see. We're going to look through it, observe what we see, look at different things, rotate it around, and try to look at the different patterns we see, and then see if we can explain them. All right? Now, the patterns you see when you have all 4 layers are pretty complicated. So I think it's easiest if we just start with one layer. All right? So if you pick up one layer and look through it, what do you see?
Well, I see it's pretty the rectangle in the middle is just tinted.
Right. So the light just looks a little bit dimmer when you look through that rectangle. Right? And if you rotate it around, does it look pretty much the same, all different directions?
Yeah. No, like tilted this way, it's tinted. This way, it's still tinted.
Right. So it's pretty similar to sunglasses. In fact, the material in here is basically the same as in sunglasses. So now, one thing you can do with just one layer is if you look at like reflections off surfaces, like glare, where light is bright off some surface, and you rotate it, what happens then?
Then the glare starts to fade as I rotate the ring.
Yeah, so it looks different. And in fact, one way to see this kind of dramatically is looking at reflections in windows. So if you hold it up to certain reflections in windows and rotate it, especially if it's dark on one side of the window, you can make those reflections just sort of disappear. Okay, so that's one layer. Now let's think about what happens when you get 2 layers. So if I take 2 layers and I put them and I just line them up exactly with each other, what do you see?
Well, it's basically the same as the last one. Tinted, it's always tinted no matter what direction I turn it.
Okay, so adding an extra layer doesn't make any difference if they're lined up. But what happens if you rotate the layers so they're diagonal to each other?
Now I kind of see this diamond in the center. That's different, like it's a bit darker than all of the other parts in it.
And if you rotate it around, it looks pretty much the same any direction, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and now let's take the 2 layers and let's rotate them so they make a cross.
Well, now I see this black square in the middle. The black square is much darker than when it was a diamond, though.
So where they cross, that square lets basically no light through. So now let's add in a 3rd layer. So we'll have 2 layers that form a cross, and then one of them makes a diagonal with respect to the other 2.
Now I see this same black square as the last one in the middle, and the rest is lighter.
But now what happens, Teddy, if you keep them the same way, but you just change the order? So I keep 2 crossed and 1 diagonal. If you change the order, do you always see that black square?
No, like it goes black square, no black square.
So the black square disappears depending on what the order is.
Yeah.
And as you change the order, you see different patterns. And now let's try adding in that last layer. And what do you see now when you look through it?
Now I see, well, it depends on which way I turn it. All the patterns are pretty complicated.
Right. So we're back to seeing kind of complicated patterns. So our goal is going to be to try to understand all those different observations using quantum science. So we're going to learn a little bit about quantum science, and that's going to help to explain all the different types of patterns we see. But we'll do that in another video, okay?
Okay.